inside. And so of course, as in all communities, we have little squabbles, occasional knife fight. We again have our children breeding germs, a few epidemics. And again, almost every room in here has a little story. When people come back to find their suitcase, started out on one bed, it's on the next bed, but they wake up in the middle of the night, the light in their room is on. But we do have children who inhabit the building as well. So TLC sent a psychic and a film crew here a few years ago, and the plan was to go through all the rooms and let the psychic get a sense, determine which ones might be the best for filming. She walked into one of the rooms and she said there was a little 7-year-old boy sitting there, and he asked her where his parents were. And she realized that he didn't know he was dead. So she kicked the film crew out and she tried to talk to him and explain to him what had happened and that he needed to essentially go to the light and find his family. He was so distraught that his spirit crawled underneath the bed and just cried. And from that day on, people who check out of that room complain that a child somewhere nearby kept them awake all night with its crying. We do most of our maintenance work in the off seasons of spring and the fall, and so one season, they were replacing a lot of the sheetrock. When you cut sheetrock, it leaves a fine film of chalk, and so the workmen decided that they weren't going to clean it up every night. They were just going to wait till they were all done and leave it be. So they shut the door behind them after that first day of work, come in the next morning, and there's 2 sets of small footprints down the hall through that chalk. And again, we could spend a lot of time here talking about rooms, but one of our volunteers stayed here with her husband last year and got in on Saturday night. She took her jewelry off and put it in the little ceramic dish on the dresser. The next morning, got up, took that. There were some coins in there from where her husband had emptied his pockets. She threw all that in her overnight bag. They went about their business during the day, and they eventually, at the end of the day, headed home towards Idaho Falls. As they leave Virginia City, the wife starts feeling very unwell. They actually stop in the emergency room in Ennis, where she spends about 2 hours getting IV treatment. They don't really know what's wrong with her, figures probably food poisoning, send her on her way. She doesn't even make it home in Idaho Falls. Her husband, again, takes her right to the hospital, and she spends about 5 days in the hospital while they try to figure out why she's so violently ill. None of the tests are conclusive. She, like most of us, just wants to go home and be sick in her own bed. Her sister's driven out from Washington to stay with her. So they load her up and take her home, and her sister meets them. Her sister's a bit of a sensitive herself, and sister says, I don't know what you did, but there's a cowboy on your porch and he says you stole from him. So they're going through the woman's luggage. They get to her overnight bag, which never made it in the house, get to that little pocket with the jewelry and the coins, and the husband says, I didn't have any coins in my pocket. They look at the coins, none of them are newer than 1948, and the sister just says, that's it. So they load the sick woman up in her car, start driving outside of Idaho Falls, throwing those coins out the window, and the lady says that by the time she reached the last coin, it was like this huge mental weight to lift it off of her. Within 2 days, she was back to perfect health. I tell people who stay here, make sure it's yours before you take it.